G'day legends, I'm back. And because I'm back, let's do something that we haven't done for a whole bloody week. Let's talk about a fight, right? And the fight that I want to talk to you the most about is Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Garry. Because I have been going over this one in my head consistently all week long. It's like a 50-50 fight in my head. The entire time I've been on that road trip, staring out at the open fields, all I can think about is this fight. Veganism versus horse meat. Being a stoic Chad from the east or a western soy boy. A bloke with all finishes or a bloke who lets someone else finish her off for him. Boys, we have returned to the ultimate war, and I feel like I need you, the boys, to help me with this one. Because in one sense, it seems like it's going in a very clear direction, doesn't it? It looks like, hey, Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to easily win this fight. We are talking about your classic sort of a wrestler, grappler versus a striker matchup, aren't we? I think it's pretty clear that all people with common sense in the MMA community think that Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to win this one. And if you're one of the people out there that are constantly beating the drum that Ian Garry is going to easily win this fight, I do think you need to look at it a little bit closer. And maybe I need to look at it a little bit closer as well, because I do have a bit of a fear from that side of the aisle. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he is going to win this one. Maybe, I don't know, I've got this like sneaking suspicion that Ian Garry might be as good as Ian Garry thinks that he is. Like, even to me, right, he seems very, very mid. And that's crazy to say about someone who is something like 8-0 in the UFC. To be 8-0 in the UFC and to have fans still think that you're fairly mid, it's probably because of the lackluster performance against MVP. But MVP sort of makes everyone look like a little bit of a fool on the feet. He has got very unorthodox striking that regular orthodox strikers, especially people like rangy kickboxers like Ian Garry, don't quite know how to close the distance on someone like MVP. But then I'm also thinking that Ian Garry is very mid because of the Jeff Neal fight, right? I have a vivid memory of watching that fight and begging Neal to step on the gas just a little bit more. But the next thing you know, the clapper has gone off and the fight is over, right? Or the Neil Magny fight. I was in Boston for this fight, surrounded by drunken Ian Garry fans. I know, I hear you. They do exist. They are out there. And they were acting like this was some sort of Ian Garry masterclass. To me, it looked like a masterclass in kicking a cripple in the legs while he's wailing around on the ground. Ian Garry. He continues to win in the most uninspiring performances in ways unseen since Merab's come up, and it is time for it to be finished, I think. But that might be what is scaring me the most about this fight, right? Ian Garry simply finds a way to continue to win. And then again, we have the classic wrestler versus striker matchup. But again, when you really look at it closely, Shavkat Rakhmonov, he's dominant and he always finds a way to win. But watch him try and take down Stephen Thompson. It took him a long, long time to try and get Stephen to the ground. And when you look at Shavkat's actual stats, I think his successful takedown rate sits somewhere around 25%. And if he can't find that takedown on Ian Garry, and then he's not going to find the sub, and then he can't find the sub and the takedown, it means he's going to be left on the feet with Ian Garry. And I think Ian Garry, for annoying as he is, he does watch his own tape. He does study himself very, very closely. Like, no one loves Ian Garry more than Ian Garry loves Ian Garry. And I believe that he is smart enough to recognize what happened to himself in that MVP fight. And I think if Shavkat can't get the takedown, Ian Garry is going into a full peak Israel Adesanya mode. Full on leg kicks from rage, 25 minutes, doing everything he can to just play on the outside and win the game of MMA. Not win the fight, not get into a cage fight in the cage, not get into a scrap in the octagon. Oh my God, no, that is the last thing Ian Garry wants to do, is get into a fun, entertaining punch-on inside of an octagon. But instead, what I think he's going to try and do is win the sport of MMA, which is dancing around the outside and just racking up that significant strike number, landing shots on the thigh, landing shots on the body, jabbing, dancing outside of the cage, just completely moving around. And Shavkat, he is going to be very comfortable standing with Ian Garry because Shavkat believes in his own striking. And he might believe in his own striking enough to allow those significant strikes to really rack up against him before he starts to charge in and shoot for the takedown later on in each round. Think of maybe Magomed Ankalaev versus Jan Blachowicz, except rather than Magomed Ankalaev being able to hold Blachowicz against the cage, Ian Garry is able to wriggle out of it. You know, if Ian can shuck them off and push them to the side and dance and circle into space, he will continue to just push that takedown away and accumulate that classic Israel Adesanya scorecard on the outside. The entire arena is going to be booing and jeering and wishing for Ian Garry's death. But have you ever noticed that when the crowd boos Ian Garry, like against the MVP fight, right? The crowd is just absolutely destroying Ian Garry. Or against Jeff Neal, right? The entire internet hates him, no matter how much people boo this guy and make fun of him. He just seems to enjoy it. And that's what happens when you're the rooster sitting in the corner chair at the end of the hotel room while someone plays with your wife. You enjoy humiliation. You want to be humiliated. That is Ian Garry to a T. He wants to be ridiculed by us all. It's an odd fetish, but it is his. Now, I've said that this fight is going back and forth in my head, and I've laid out a pretty strong case as to why I think Ian Garry will win this fight. But here's where I think things could go wrong for him, right? I think he's been training with the shoot the box team, right? And we saw in his last fight that Ian Garry is very happy to go to the ground. With MVP, he showed a brilliantly amateur display in jiu-jitsu. But here's the thing. Ian has got a massive ego, and I think that he thinks he did really, really well on the ground against MVP. And the shoot the box, when it comes to their style of striking, they allow their opponents to knock them down, and they use their guard and their jiu-jitsu as a place of recovery, as somewhere safe, because they know at shoot the box that they are better on the ground than everybody else. But Ian Garry is not Charles Oliveira. Ian Garry is very, very different, and you do not become Charles Oliveira by simply training at the shooter box for 3 years. So I do believe there is a good chance that we're going to see Ian Garry get taken down and allow himself to try and play this ground game with Shavkat Rakhmonov, who I think is stronger, more skilled. He has got everything that it takes to win on the ground with Ian Garry. When he is on top of Ian Garry, I believe that he wins that section of the fight. And because they have trained together before, Shavkat and Ian, because they've trained together before, they know each other's styles, right? A little bit. They understand each other. And I think Ian is going to be like, this is something that Shavkat hasn't seen before. Me on the ground. Me post shoot the box era. I think Ian thinks that this is where he's going to be able to shock Shavkat with a new style that he doesn't know about, which is great for us boys. He might end up shooting himself in the foot and getting submitted. That is what I think is our best chance here. Our best chance for MMA fans all across the world to see what they have wanted to see for years now. The end of the Ian Garry run. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov will be able to put him away, and I think it'll be so beautifully ironic that it will be Ian Garry himself that allows it to happen. He will essentially give away his own O on his scorecard using the power of Ian's own ego, thinking that he is better on the ground than he actually is. So maybe, like I said at the start, this fight is 50-50. There's a 50% chance that Shavkat will land and sleep Ian Garry, and there's a 50% chance that this fight goes to the ground and Shavkat subs him. 50-50, Shavkat 100%. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comments. G'day, if this is your first time here, my name is Dougie, and I generally make an MMA video every single day of the week, unless I've driven off to go camping for the week, in which case you might not hear from me. But I'm back now. So hit that subscribe button. Come and join in on the channel. If you're already on board with the channel, boys, you know what to do. Hit that like button. It's good to talk to you all again, and I will see you all very soon in the next video.